Hey everyone. So today we're jumping into the work of Immanuel Kant. But I want you to forget about dusty old philosophy books for a second. Instead, think of this as a detective story. Our detective, Kant, is on the case. And he's tackling the biggest questions you can possibly ask. Does God exist? Is the universe infinite? Do we have an immortal soul? Let's dive into his investigation.
But first, let me ask you something. Can you, right now, logically prove with 100% certainty that you have a soul? I don't mean feel it or believe in it. I mean prove it, like a math problem. This is exactly the kind of high-stakes question that philosophy tries to answer, and Kant wanted to figure out if our reason was even capable of handling the job.
So let's meet our detective, Immanuel Kant. He was a major figure during the Enlightenment, and he had this absolutely revolutionary idea. He realized that before we can even try to understand the universe out there, we first have to understand the tool we're using to look at it, our own mind. Kant argued our mind isn't just a blank slate. No, it comes with a kind of pre-installed operating system, built-in rules that shape everything we experience.
And that brings us to his most crucial distinction. Kant basically splits reality into two categories. On one side, you've got the world of phenomena. This is reality after it's been processed by our mind's software. It's the world of our senses, of cause and effect, the world that exists in time and space. But then on the other side, you have the world of noumena, reality as it truly is, totally independent of our minds, the thing in itself.
And here's the kicker. Kant concludes that we are fundamentally locked out of that second world, the world of noumena. We can never directly access it. All of our knowledge, everything we can ever prove with reason, can only be about the world of phenomena, the world as it appears to us. This one idea sets the boundaries for his entire investigation.
Okay, so our detective has his method, he understands the limits of his tools, now he turns his magnifying glass on the three biggest, most controversial metaphysical arguments of his time. And he's not just going to wave his hands and say they're unsolvable. No, he's going to take them apart, piece by painful piece, and show us exactly where the logic goes off the rails.
And here they are, his three big cases. First, he's going to tackle the arguments for the soul. Then, he'll look at cosmology, which is all about the ultimate nature of the universe. And finally, he'll investigate the classic proofs for the existence of God.
So, let's check out the first case, the soul. Kant took a look at that classic argument. I think, therefore I am a thinking thing, and he found a critical flaw, a faulty logical leap he called a paralogism. So the argument starts with the experience, I think. Okay, that's fine. But then it jumps to the conclusion, therefore, I am a thinking substance. And Kant puts on the brakes. He says, whoa, substance is one of those built-in categories in our mental software. We're just adding it in. We're not actually proving it from the evidence. But what's really fascinating here is that Kant isn't trying to disprove the soul. Not at all. He's just showing that this particular logical proof doesn't work. In fact, he actually thought the idea of a soul was a really useful one because it pushes back against a purely materialistic view of the world where we're all just robots. So he's not killing the idea, just the bad logic being used to defend it.
Okay, next up, the cosmos. And here, Kant discovers something even stranger, a problem he called an antinomy. Now, an antinomy is a situation where pure reason, when it tries to think about the universe as a whole, ends up proving two things that are the complete opposite of each other. It literally contradicts itself.
And this just shows the problem perfectly. Kant demonstrated that you can construct a totally valid, logical proof for the thesis that the universe must have a beginning in time. And then you can turn right around and construct an equally valid, logical proof for the antithesis that the universe must be infinite with no beginning. Both sides are provable. Reason creates a perfect stalemate.
So, what does this all mean? It means that when it comes to the biggest questions about the universe, our reason hits a total dead end. It just ties itself in knots. We simply cannot use logic to achieve certainty about the ultimate nature of reality as a whole.
All right, for his final case, Kant takes on the traditional proofs for the existence of God. And what he finds here is that the arguments are basically a philosophical house of cards. You see, the argument from design, that the world looks designed, that only works if you already accept the argument for a first cause. And that argument only works if you accept the one at the very bottom, the ontological argument. And the ontological argument is where the whole structure just collapses. Kant pointed out its fatal flaw. It tries to define God into existence by treating existence as if it's just another property, like being all-powerful or all-knowing. But Kant says, hold on, existence isn't a property you can just add to a concept. You can't just define something into being real.
On top of that, the argument leans on the idea of a necessary being, which is another one of those concepts from our mental toolkit that we can't prove actually applies to reality itself.
So, after dismantling the proofs for the soul, the cosmos, and God, you'd probably think Kant's verdict is that these ideas are just nonsense, right? Well, this is where our detective story takes a really fascinating and completely surprising twist.
See, Kant's goal was never to destroy religion or morality. It was to show the limits of pure reason. In his own famous words, he said he had to deny knowledge in order to make room for belief. He showed that pure reason was simply the wrong tool for answering these ultimate questions. He wasn't getting rid of them, he was just moving them into a whole different category.
So why does any of this matter? Because by drawing a hard line around what we can know, Kant created a safe, protected space for what we can reasonably believe. He basically cleared the table of all these faulty logical proofs to make way for a completely different kind of justification.
And he called this moral certainty. This isn't a logical proof you write on a blackboard. It's a conviction that comes from our inner experience of being moral creatures. It's that undeniable gut feeling that there's a right and a wrong, and that deep down we know we ought to do the right thing.
And here is the final brilliant move in Kant's entire investigation. He argues that this deep moral certainty gives us a practical reason to believe in the very things he just showed we can't prove. Remember those cold cases? The immortal soul, free will, God? Pure reason failed to solve them. But Kant says, for our moral lives to make any sense at all, it becomes not just reasonable, but almost necessary to act as if they are true. They become justified beliefs not because of cold logic, but because they're essential to our humanity.
So in the end, Kant's investigation doesn't just give us a simple answer. It completely redraws the map of human certainty. He shows us that reason is an incredibly powerful tool, but it has its limits. And beyond those limits isn't just an empty void. So that leaves us with a profound question to think about. If proof isn't everything, then what actually gives our most important beliefs their power and their value? Now that's a case worth investigating for ourselves.